Well, welcome everybody to another episode of From Hostage to Hero. SariDLM here with you, the Attorney Whisperer. And today we have a special guest. We have Coach Joonho Hong. And the reason he's called Coach Joon, Coach Joon is what he's called actually in the FHTH Crew, is because he is now working for me part-time. Of course, he's still being a lawyer in his other life. This is his true life. But welcome, Joon, to the podcast.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here. And yeah, I can't wait. This is going to be fun.
Today's podcast is a little bit introducing you to the group because they'll be seeing more of you, especially if they join the H2H crew. And it's also, we're going to be talking about habits and their importance when it comes to trial technique for trial lawyers. So I want to start first with learning a little bit more about you, and then we're going to get into the habit piece of this. So tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you came into the SariDLM world.
Sure. So let's see. I've been a plaintiff's lawyer for my entire legal career. But before that, I had different careers before I became a lawyer. So I started out as wanting to be and on the journey to be a pop R&B singer. So I was
You're quite good. I've heard you sing.
Thank you. Yes. So those were some fun times and fun days. And then that led to me actually producing a couple of plays. One of the last plays that I did was at the Lincoln Center over here in Manhattan. So that was pretty cool, where I got to act, sing, and produce.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was my first life, I guess, if you will. And I just kind of got a little, I guess, I wasn't happy with what the music business was. So I decided to do something else. I met my now wife, and I thought, what can I do to do something to be a little more practical? And that's when I decided to go to law school. It was almost on a whim. And throughout my law school journey, I fell into plaintiff's personal injury work. And I tried a whole bunch of other stuff, but this is the work that really resonated with me. I thought when I was in law school, I was like, oh, I'm never going to do personal injury. That's right. I thought I was going to go to like a big white shoe law firm, but then I had opportunities to do that kind of work, and I hated it. I really hated it. But the only thing that I really enjoyed was doing plaintiff PI work. And so I've been doing that ever since. And then I think I was second chairing on a case with my old boss, and the defense attorney on that case. He's a real plaintiff's guy, and you know him. He's also an H2H crew now.
He's now a
good
plaintiff's
buddy.
guy. He wasn't always a plaintiff's guy. Yeah.
Yes. And he put me on to trial guides. He's like, hey, man, go check out trial guides. So I started my trial guides
wait.
journey
We have a
there.
defense attorney that was helpful.
Yes. Yes. And you know what it was? Is because I think, honest to God, in his heart, he's always been a true plaintiff's guy. He was just, I think, taking like a career decision to do the defense side just to get in the courtroom more often and things of that nature. And when I got into trial guides, I started hearing SariDLM. And I was like, what's this? And I'm hearing your name here, then I'm searching on the web, and then I see some of your content out there, and I'm watching everything. Then I'm going to your website, and I'm just taking everything in because your message just really resonated with me. And then you came out with a podcast, and I just fell in love with that. And then, yeah, you didn't know it, but I was secretly stalking you. And then I just said, it was your podcast where you said you're going all in. When you said you're going all in, that really just struck a chord with me. And I said, screw it, I'm going all in. And I reached out to you, and that was the beginning of this journey. And here I am now.
Well, it's funny because speaking of that defense attorney, now turned plaintiff attorney, he was talking to me. He's now part of our crew as well. And he was saying, what did you do with Joon? He is absolutely a totally and completely different person after working with you for a year, because after you did stalk me, I ended up training you to become Coach Joon, which happened this last February. So how would you describe that metamorphosis, and what does he mean by you're a completely different person?
Yeah, I think what he means in terms of me being a completely different person was I'm now doing my work without being shackled by this fear,
Mm.
by this self-doubt and the limiting beliefs. Now it's just like I just go all out and say, I want to try that without regard of whether, oh, can it be done? Will defense, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to do something that would get a mistrial, but within
Right.
the realm of the frame of what I'm allowed to do, I go as far as I can without regard of, oh, but what if the defense attorney objects? I'm like, great, that means I'm doing a great job, you know? And so I think that's what he meant. And I
And
just,
how are you able to do that? How are you able to get rid of or at least manage that fear? Because I think that's
it,
something that our listeners absolutely deal with. You did
yeah,
before kind of coming into this world. Fear is a big part of this world.
yeah. I think it really started with the mindset training and the coach in my work with Coach Kevin, Coach K.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when I
Coach K,
started
for
with,
those of you who don't know, is my husband and also a coach in the crew. Yeah.
yes, so he really helped me just see that this fear, and I'm using air quotes, is just my limiting beliefs. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I still get what what people consider fear. It's not that I'm just like, hey, I'm fearless. And no, it's I can manage it. And so
Mm,
I choose how I want to be or how I want to think about whatever circumstance I'm in. So if I'm in a certain circumstance like trial, I can be like, oh God, the defense attorney said that I have no case and whatever, and I could think, oh shoot, what am I gonna do? I'm so scared. What am I?
maybe
Or I
he's
could choose,
right. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Or through after doing this work with Coach K and still doing this every day, um, now I choose to think, I'm like, oh, he's scared. He's posturing. I'm like, oh man, I got a kick-ass case.
Yep, that's his stuff, not my stuff. Yeah. I
Exactly.
love that. And so often people I just got another review on the podcast and somebody said, I came here for the trial skills. I stayed for the personal growth. And so, years and years ago when I decided to bring in the mindset piece to this work because I started out, as a nonverbal expert and teaching people the nonverbal part, but it was limiting. A lot of people said, marketing people said, lawyers aren't going to buy mindset work. They're not going to buy personal transformation. And I'm so thrilled to find that that's not true. As we know in the H2H crew, so much of what we're doing is, yes, trial skills, but a huge piece of that is working on the mindset because you can't use the trial skills unless you've got the right mindset. Wouldn't you agree?
Totally. 100%.
Yeah.
Totally.
So one of my favorite things about you is that you are now a mindset master. I really believe this to be true. I mean, you were able to manifest working with me. One day I want to work with Sari, and here you are, and which I love that story. But the other day you were sharing a story with me about how you were sharing with someone else that you were working with me. And would you share their response and your response to their response? Because I think this is a fear, whether you work with me or not, of a lot of attorneys of not having the verdicts or the verdict. So share that story with us because I think it's just so amazing. And then we're going to get into talking about habits.
Yeah, sure. So, one of my fellow attorneys, when I was sharing with him, because I was really excited, I'm like, hey, it's official now. And, I'm working with SariDLM and all that stuff. And, he was happy for me. And, but then he asked me, hey, quick question though. Why would anybody want to come to you for trial skills or trial consulting when you don't have the record or the string of these huge verdicts? And the old me, without the mindset training, would have been like, oh shoot, you know? It's
He's
like, yeah, you're
right.
right. Yeah. But the new me or the new way I think, I was just like, my automatic response to him was like, that's a good question. In fact, I used to ask myself the same thing. But here's the thing. I actually asked that question to Sari way back when. I said, why would you want to work with me? I don't have these records. You could work with any amazing trial lawyer you want. Why me? I don't have the record. And this is one of the favorite things, one of the favorite conversations I ever had with you. And you said to me, well, that's a good question, June, but let me ask you, how many verdicts do I have? And I'm like, what do you mean? And you're like, how many verdicts do I have? I'm like, well, none. You're not an attorney. She goes, uh-huh. And has that stopped me from getting, I was like, ah, I see your point. And so I threw that just like that. I threw it back onto that lawyer in my office, and he just kind of sat back in his chair and was like, huh, cool, man, congratulations. You know?
Love it, because it could have easily taken you off of your game. And for me, I want to answer this publicly. Why you? I have never in my entire career found someone who is such an amazing learner, someone who embraces this information, and not only embraces it and has taken it into your own life, but is so willing to share what you've learned with other people. I mean, I would be concerned hiring someone with a huge, win record, because when you have that, you think you know everything. And what's great about the work that you and I are doing is we're curious and we're exploring, and I think that's what makes this work. And so I'm just thrilled and honored that you would come on board as Coach Joon. And so it's been wonderful working with you and continuing the work that we're going to do together. So let's talk about habits, because this has kind of become your thing now that you've kind of restarted your life and sharing all that you're learning. Tell us a little bit about why creating habits when it comes down, especially to trial skills, but really anything in your life, whether that's getting in shape or becoming a better listener, which is, both things that will help with trial. Why are habits important for trial lawyers? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think habits are important for trial lawyers and everybody, like you were saying, is because without the habits, the action steps, then whatever our goals are, our aspirations, our dreams are just lofty dreams, and we're never going to reach them because you're not taking the action steps.
Yeah, so you have 3 things that you want our trial attorneys to focus on in today's episode. And the first one you shared with me, which I think is so huge, we don't tend to think of this when we think of how to create habits, but is to get clear on what your goals are. Talk to me about why that's so important.
Yeah, so if you're not clear on ultimately what you want to achieve, then you're not going to be able to figure out how to achieve it. You're not going to be able to figure out what habits you need to develop to achieve it. So, I mean, think about like when you're taking a road trip and you punch in the destination, right? It's in your GPS. It tells you, okay, here's a route. And sometimes it gives you 3 different routes you can take, and you can review it and say, well, I don't want to take that route because yada, yada, yada. Let me, so you can figure things out. So I look at habits and getting clear on what your goal is in a similar way, in terms of, I see my destination. Now let me figure out the best path to get there. And in order to determine the best path, you can then kind of reverse engineer. Okay, these are the habits that I need to develop in order to reach that goal.
And I think what most people get wrong about habits too is that they think I need to develop some. And the fact of the matter is we all have habits right now that we are following, sometimes unconsciously. And I think that's why your first step here is so important, is that get clear on what you want so that you can create habits around that versus these unconscious habits that we have, because the brain loves efficiency, as our listeners have always heard me say. And so it will do the same thing over and over again if it gets a particular result. And so looking at the result that we want is huge, I believe. But so many people have trouble getting clear on what it is that they want. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because there's so many different voices, external and internal. And, it takes some time to just quiet your mind to really get clear on what you want. Because it's like, as I've been doing this work with you and I've been evolving, and things just strip away a little more and more. And I'm like, wait, what I used to think was my goal or aspiration, I realized that was somebody else's goal that I kind of took upon myself. Huge. So the whole, like, for example, like getting the huge win the huge win record. I used to be like, well, that's what I got to do. And, you know, if I don't get that, then I'm not a good trial lawyer or whatever. I'm at the point now, I'm like, well, that is not my goal. My goal is to just be able to go out there and have fun and enjoy the entire process, you know, regardless of what the result is. Because I realize that that win record is really everybody else's expectations, or what I think everybody else's expectations are of me. And I'm like, that's not my goal.
I think a lot of trial attorneys that they feel that outside pressure, right? I'm not a great trial attorney unless I have those things. I think so I think that's a really huge piece of this, why we aren't clear, is because there's these outside pressures that we need to untangle from what we really want. I think the second thing too is that we think small, right? We don't think it's possible. I mean, there was a moment for you when you went from wishing you could work with me to believing that it could happen, and that's when it happened. It was like you had to step over that threshold before and think big before. Not that I'm saying working with me is the, you know, the be all end all, but for you it was at one moment. And
It
so
still is.
for you, you had to move from, oh, that would be nice, to, no, this is fucking happening.
Yeah. I still remember the day when I was deciding whether to send you that email or not. I was like, had it drafted. I'd even put your email address in the to box, because I was like,
ooh,
I don't know if I want to
dangerous.
send it yet. Yes. So I had it all drafted, redrafted. And finally I was like, screw it, send, boom. And I was like,
Nice. Well, we're doing so much work with the people in the crew on figuring out what it is that they want. And that's such a huge piece of this. The second thing that you shared with me is that when you're creating a new habit, they have to be small. Talk to me about that.
yeah. So the reason why we want to go small is because really is if we make them too big, it's going to be really hard to form that habit. Like, I mean, let's take working out, for example. There's a reason why when we have our New Year's resolution and everybody's like, yeah, I'm going to get fit this year and I'm going to work out 5 days a week and blah, blah, blah. Within like a couple of weeks or a month, nobody's working out anymore. It's too big. So you basically want to build the muscle of being consistent, doing something consistently. And usually what you'll find that happens is, you know what your end goal is. Like, I want to, you know, be in great physical shape. Well, I'm going to really make it small and just say each day I will do, I don't know, like two push-ups, whatever. But usually you'll find out is from doing that little tiny small habit, making it small, you end up doing more than those 2 push-ups. So that's why it's really important to make it small, just to build that consistency habit. And then I think that brings us to the next part where you want to feel good about doing that.
Right. So that's the third piece, is that you want to celebrate those wins. But before we move there, you know, share with me one of the habits that you created around trial technique or trial practice.
So one of the habits that I started doing was pretty much, I remember when I think it was after I came back from the studio, voir dire studio, I started instilling a habit of just practicing the designed lines each morning. Just after I eat breakfast, I'm like, okay, and I would just practice it. And it feels really easy and natural. And it's like, if I fumble, I can just kind of bring it back. And that was just one of the small little habits I built up.
For the listeners who aren't sure what a designed alliance is, you can go back and look for the podcast, How to Design an Alliance with Jurors. But what's important about that, this repeating that all the time, especially now that you're not in trial? I mean, why would you take the time to practice a designed alliance every day after breakfast?
Yeah, because I mean, I think right now, this whole COVID time is probably the best time to develop trial skills and habits. And the reason why you want to make it a habit is because you want it to be almost second nature. You want it to be, I can do this without even having to think about it.
Yeah, and I think this is the piece that people are missing, is that we even when non-COVID times. We go to trial, what, maybe 2 times a year, 3 if we're lucky for most trial attorneys. Some are more, some are less, some are once every 2 or 3 years. And so this is where people start to freak out when trial is on the docket, because they're like, oh my God, I haven't tried, my trial skills for a while. And so this creating these habits so that you are ready at any moment to go to trial not only creates such confidence, but it's this feeling of I'm always prepared, which is one of the things that people say to me all the time. I'm not prepared. Well, yeah, in terms of the content, that's always something new. You're having to learn with every case, but at least your nonverbals are down and you're knowing how to do this. You also have another habit around issue-oriented voir dire. Share that with me.
Yeah. So what I do is, and I kind of, because basically the habit was I work on an issue-oriented voir dire every day, right? And there was a period of time where it was just, when I have depositions coming on and conferences, it was just the habit was too big. So I boiled it down and made it real small. And I said, just start by doing the issue-oriented voir dire by stating your case in one sentence. The first step, just do that. And then what ended up happening is, because when I do that now it puts me like, I feel good about it. This is fun. This is what I love doing. Then I go on to the next step, and then the next step, and the next step. So yeah, working on an issue-oriented voir dire every day is another one of my habits.
Yeah. Why do you think it's so important, just to go back to that, is the first step in issue-oriented voir dire, which is, what is this case about in one sentence? You remember I asked you all that in the voir dire studio. What's important about that? About being able to say what it's about in one sentence, because that's difficult for most trial attorneys.
It forces you to really focus on what the case is about.
Yeah, absolutely, and get clear on it. And I always say you can't use that many commas or semicolons. People want to have this big paragraph about it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tougher than you think. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go to the third one, which is celebrate the small wins. You had said something in the crew a couple weeks ago about how important it is to feel good when you're making changes versus what most of us tend to do, which is either try to make changes from a place of, I feel bad about this part of my life, so I'm going to make this change so I don't feel bad anymore. To when we try to make the changes and we can't make them, or we don't make them, then we also feel bad. Basically, bad is the emotion around change. Why are you telling us that we should feel good and find as many opportunities to feel good about change and habit making?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. It really comes down to, I guess, human nature, if you will. If you really feel good about if you do feel good about something when you're doing it, the chances are you're going to keep doing it, right? Because it just feels good. So that's why I say do these small habits, because when you do it and you celebrate, yes, I did it, right? And it might seem cheesy at first, but you got to force yourself. What I do is I just do a fist pump and I put a huge smile on my face and I just go, yes, and I celebrate it and I make sure I really feel that emotion of just, yeah, I did it, right? And it releases that dopamine, right, in your brain, and makes you like, hey, I'm going to do this again and again and again, as opposed to, feeling bad. And because that's what happens, like going back to the New Year's resolution of people working out, when they skip a day, they're like, oh, you loser. I knew you couldn't do it. And lo and behold, they just stop altogether.
John Acuff in his book, Finish, talks about basically how to finish things. And he says, the most important day is the day after perfect. It's what you do on that day, right? So the day that you don't get up to work out, that's the important day, because that's when people give up. And that's where you need to bring in some of this positivity. I think it's very similar to what we teach in the crew, which is you're amazing as is right now. And people often say, but I'm not, or haven't earned it, or other attorneys will say, why are you telling these mediocre attorneys that they're good right now? They don't have the win-loss record, to go back full circle. And what we've always said is, because that's where change takes place. When you step into greatness, you start doing things that great attorneys do. If you come from brokenness, and I'm broken and I need all this external stuff before I start feeling good about my trial practice, you'll never get there, because nobody, as you just so aptly pointed out, likes to do things over and over again that make them feel bad.
Yeah.
We want to do things that make them feel good, which I think is why the crew is so hot right now, is because the crew and our teaching in the crew makes people feel good. They come
Yeah.
in, they try the trial skills. We tell them, yes, what they need to fix, but we also tell them how amazing they are and how much they've advanced. And that is why people keep coming back to keep trying. I
Yeah.
think that's a huge piece of why what we're doing in the crew works.
Totally. Totally. And I love seeing how, I mean, from this perspective as Coach Joon, when I'm seeing the crewbies and the crew members coming out and just doing the things, and they start shedding all their
Hmm.
fears and their doubts, and then I see it's so cool to see their transformation and saying, see, now you're revealing who you already were, and all you have to
Yes.
do is shed off all that extra baggage. So it's so cool to see that.
Well, and I love that you said that, because I think in most places people think when you come to learn, you're adding things, right? Here's all
Mm,
these skills that you have to add. And there are skills, of course, but you're so right. What we do, at least at first, is get rid of all the bullshit thinking,
yep.
the bullshit skills that didn't fit them, that don't feel authentic, to find out and reveal who they really are so that they can step into their greatness. Why don't you share with our listeners how you function in the crew, and should they decide to join in April when we open again, where and when they'll see you?
Yeah, sure. So as Coach June, how I function in the H2H crew is that twice a month I am offering, what do you call, office hours, where for one for voir dire and one for nonverbal coaching. And pretty much it's for those, because the hot seats just they go out like hotcakes. So for Sari, not for me. I'm joking. But yeah, so then there we have, because there's only limited numbers of hot seats, we have a bunch of members who don't have the opportunity or not getting the opportunity to work in the hot seat capacity, where they're practicing the voir dire skills or the nonverbal skills and whatnot. So we're just giving them another opportunity to practice where you don't have to reserve a hot seat. Just show up and first come, first serve. You want to try something out within the realm of voir dire or nonverbal coaching, then yeah, that's what I'm here for. And then in terms of the Facebook community, yeah, I mean, there's some great stuff going in there with a lot of questions and feedback, and I'm there. So if you have questions, just post something, and I'd love to just share my thoughts, and we just get the whole community in there. And it's a great collaboration of just great minds working together.
Yeah, it's really, the crew is just incredible. For those of you who are still considering joining, we really believe in the four pieces to change or to advance in your mastery are live training, instruction, which you get in there, practice, feedback, and community. And so those are the four pillars of really getting on the path to mastery, and that's what we offer in the crew. And so if you join in April, you'll see me, you'll see Coach June, you'll see Coach K, and we are training two new coaches as well to hopefully bring into the H2H community. So make sure that you go to FromHostageToHero.com to add your name to the wait list for when we reopen in April. We normally open 4 times a year. We may not open again this summer just due to my surgery and my radiation and all that stuff going on. We're not sure. That's up in the air. So just make sure you get in April if you're thinking about doing it, because we're not sure about the June opening, and we won't open again until October. Well, thank you, June, for being here. I'm so excited to introduce you to everyone, and we're so glad to have you on board. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and it's an absolute honor. Thank you for just bringing me on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, crew, we'll talk to you soon.